Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours.
Hi, all. Charlie Hedges here with the next chapter with Charlie, and I just wanted to let you know that today's episode is really one of my favorites, and it's with one of my favorite people, with Kamin Samuel. And we are going to talk about reinventing your life post-COVID. Now, there's a lot of post-COVID talk going on, but what we plan to do today and what we actually succeeded at doing today was discovering that reinventing your life does not mean you have to change careers, spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends. It's a matter of priorities within what you're doing. Now, it may call for a change of life, but it may not. And Kamin asked three very important questions that we need to ponder about our last year in COVID. And the three questions are, did I love my work? Secondly, was it meaningful? And third, did I begin to feel that I am built for something more in alignment with my soul, my talents, and my desires? That's what we're going to talk about today. It's great stuff. Enjoy the show with Kamin Samuel. Kamin Samuel, what a treat to have you on the show once again.
Hi, Charlie. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I can't wait. You know, Kamin, chatting with you is always such a delight, and really, you are one of my all-time favorite guests because you offer us so much.
Oh, thank you. It's fun to be here.
Yeah, it is. And I'll tell you, right now, it appears that we're about to enter a bit of everything is going to be post-COVID phase in life in the United States. And so I think a lot of shows are going to be doing post-COVID type of shows, and we're going to do one ourselves. And I was thinking that perhaps now might be a good time to rethink what our personal life might look like in the near as well as longer-term future. And I'm choosing to call this show Reinventing Your Life Post-COVID. What do you think about that?
I love that topic. I love the title because I do think it's an opportunity for us now to reinvent ourselves, to really look at this last year as our own individual wake-up call into who do we want to be from here, who do we want to emerge into, what are we learning, so that we can do things differently from this point forward.
That's a great way to put it, a wake-up call to reevaluate or evaluate, maybe even for the first time, what our life was like, is like, and can be like. As we discussed a couple days ago, a great place to begin might be to assess our life last year from what you called a higher altitude, asking ourselves what we might have learned from isolation and quarantine, as well as from fear and frustration. It really impacted us, didn't it?
Yes. I think it impacted us in ways that, we're still awakening to. We don't understand all of the impacts. We know that for some it was, financial or health or just isolation in general. And so it's an opportunity before we go back into business as usual, life as usual, to really define that and really take stock of this last year, what went well, what didn't go well, where am I, and then really have an honest discussion with ourselves about who we are and what we want.
You're so right in that, and I'm afraid that too many of us are looking at now's time to go back to life as we once knew it, when really this is a fine opportunity to not go back to life as we once knew it, but to go into life as we want it to be. As taking, as you said, the lessons we learned over the last 14 to 16 months, and applying them to our lives. Now, many of us had an opportunity to be quiet. Many of us didn't have an opportunity when we had a house filled with children and crazy spouses and who knows what all, and families. But there was still a lot of us that had an opportunity to be quiet, and that quietude gives us a way to partake in what I like to call essential ponderings, the kind that can lead to creative learning. So I've got a question for you about creative learning, Kamin. What were, during this time of 2020 and early 21, what were a couple key learnings that you experienced as a result of being more quiet, although you were busier than you've ever been, but you still had opportunity to be alone? What were a couple learnings for you?
Charlie, that's such a great question, because as I look at this last year, as you said, and as I had told you, this was probably my busiest year, serving people as a coach and really helping them see this world as creative rather than happening to me. And so I think that one of the lessons for myself was, being able to, in that busyness, find the quiet time, take time for myself. I happen to live in a beautiful home, and so being able, I found a new spot to sit in, to meditate in.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and it wasn't something that I had spent a lot of time in before, but it was an opportunity for me to watch nature and look out and look further into creativity as to what I want my life to be about, and how do I want to serve? How do I want to help people? And to really take some time for myself to really kind of grow up into myself in this pause into what I want to do.
What does it mean to grow up into yourself? I mean, you seem to me to be pretty grown up into yourself. You are an inordinately mature woman for your age, and so what does it mean to grow into yourself? Talk to me about that.
Well, I think each of us, regardless of where we are in our life, there's a whole nother level, right? So for me, I can be so busy and being, satisfied being busy and miss what I'm awakening to in what I do and how I do it and what I can offer. So let me give you an example. So even though a lot of the work that I do is around wealth and wealth consciousness, I was still kind of in a protected bubble, just working with my clients and staying really busy. I had to really look up and see, I can share what I do with more people. Now, looking up and wanting to share what I do with more people, brought up some questions of, do I want to be seen more? Do I want to expand? And I had to literally, make sure that I was safe inside of myself to be like, yes, absolutely. Here's everything I have on wealth and wealth consciousness and changing from the inside out. But it wasn't just I really had to look at my own process of saying, yes, this is something that I want to move into, not just do it as a default.
And isn't that sort of out of context for you? Am I wrong in saying that you're a pretty strong introvert?
A very strong introvert. I call myself a hermit level introvert. And
so you getting out into the public and doing this is really quite a stretch for you, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so, they say, okay, let's lock down the world. I'm like, yes, Finally, everybody is in my court. So I'm good with that. So, we may talk about this later. I'll give you all the reasons why we should stay in lockdown.
That's you and
I think it's awesome in lockdown.
I'm with you. And one of the things that you said, so I'm kind of going back earlier what you said, that you have this place that you go to. My friend Terry Hershey has written several books on sanctuary, and place is very important, and I don't think we realize that the importance of place and space. I have a room that is my contemplative, meditative room, and I've got a couple icons in there, and I've it's still got a bed in it. It's a bedroom, but I have my candles, and there is something about that place when I enter that room, shut that door, light those candles. I'm in a whole different state of mind, and it's because of the place. There is something physical, tangible about a place. Do you find that to be true with your place?
Well, yes, and I will say we can make it that space no matter if we're living in a one-bedroom apartment or in a home or whatever. It's really carving out a place where some people, and I'm not saying that this would be for everyone, but create a mini altar with their favorite readings or their spiritual readings and a candle and something beautiful. And so it doesn't have to be like for somebody if they're living in a one-bedroom apartment or home or whatever, that they can create that by really infusing it with that energy of love and lightness and light and beauty, and even having music play if that's what works for them. And so I can create that space anywhere, whether I'm in a hotel room or here or wherever. It's really the intentionality of that space.
I like that, infusing the space with something that makes it special, and I like the building the altar because, like I said, my prayer room, my contemplative room is a bedroom. There's a bed in it and there's dressers, but I put a couple of icons and I use one dresser as an altar, and guests can use it as a bedroom, but when I go in and shut the door and put on my candles, it's a whole different room. I don't notice the bed. I notice this is my place, but I do find there's something comforting. I can find space in a hotel room or in a house. I'm going to be visiting with my son, and I'll take my materials, and I will have a space in his house. But there is something special about my space that I am free to be me in.
Yeah, beautiful.
Now, you alluded as we were talking, and I think our listeners are probably getting a grasp that I speak with all of my guests, earlier in the week before we talk, so we can kind of work out a program and get to know each other. Now, when we were talking, you alluded to three, what I think are very critical aspects about what we might have pondered about work and lifestyle during this time. And the three items that you listed to me: did I love my work? Was it meaningful? And 3, did I begin to feel that I am built for something more in alignment with my talents and desires, not to mention in alignment with my soul? I'm going to talk about meaning later, but right now I'd like to talk about work, life, and soulful alignment. What ideas do you have about that?
Well, I love soulful alignment, because what a lot of the work that I do with my clients, is around alignment. They've come to me because they are out of alignment with who they are and what they want to do in the world. They're either, some of them are coaches and they're working too hard and not making enough money and they want to blow it up, or they're professors or business or consultants and business owners or executives. And really, when we started the pandemic, I went to all of my clients and asked them the same question, like, the first question was, how is this here to bless you? The second question is, how is this an answer to an unconscious prayer? And
I remember you asking that on the last podcast, and I think it's a brilliant question.
Well, and it goes into the soulful alignment this way, because many people who lost their jobs, when I've talked to them and I've asked them that question, they said, I didn't cause this. And I'm like, I'm not saying you caused it, but how is this pause an answer to an unconscious prayer? Well, that alignment, that soulful alignment, meaning I didn't love my job and I didn't know another way to be. I didn't know how to get out of my job. I didn't know that I could possibly make money doing something else. So this opportunity, as we look for meaning and purpose and really realigning ourselves with our soul, with what wants to come through us, we really want to pay attention to what's calling forth from us. What do we love to do? What would we do regardless? If anybody paid us, we'll worry about whether you get paid for it after you find your own inner alignment. And one of the greatest tools that I've used, and I use a lot in my practice, is a book by Gay Hendricks called The Big Leap. And he has a question to find your zone of genius, and he's expanded it into this upward spiral. But that first question is, I'm at my best when I'm. And so people really listening to that question and taking note and spending some time so that they can be aligned with who they are in the world. What are their natural gifts and abilities? What would they like to do with those gifts? What do people praise them for? And the second question from that zone of genius is when I'm at my best, the exact thing I'm doing is. So people can get into this alignment with who they are being. And that is so important as we come into this post-pandemic, post-COVID world, that we don't go back to business as usual. We don't go back to life as usual. We all as a collective had a hand in this global pause. So let's make sure that we awake to that before we come out.
That is so true, and it's one of those things that I call it says easy, does hard, because we have so many voices trying to tell us who we are on the inside. We have so many external voices. Kids have parents. Adult children have parents that are telling them what they should be like, and teachers and bosses, and this is what your skill is, and you're really good at this, and somebody praises you for something, and it very well could be true, a passionate, authentic piece of you, but it may not be. It may be just something you happen to be talented at, but that is not one of your gifts, your special gifts, your unique gifts of what you are. It's just because you are good at something does not mean that it is what you were meant to be, or what or whom you were meant to be. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, correct. Because generally that will fall into zone of excellence, as Gay says. And I had the opportunity to publish a book with Gay last year, Unconscious Luck workbook, and this opportunity for us to really look at not only what are people saying, but validate for ourselves. That's the question of, I'm at my best when I'm doing what, and then really looking for, and does it light me up? Does it light me up Do I love to do it? Does time evaporate when I'm doing it? And so if people are coming out and really this is an opportunity to reconnect and reinvent themselves, really being able to connect into like what lights me up when I'm doing something, noticing that energy. And I think it was, you had an interview with Terry that said for him it was goosebumps.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
When he feels goosebumps, that's the same thing in his own life.
I like that. I used to ask a similar question about trying to find out your truest inner self, and one question is, what do you love to do? But then that's rather common. But also, what excites you? What do you get excited about? And I like your idea of, what do you lose time doing that you think you've been working on it for 30 minutes and you look and you've been on it for 4 hours, and without even knowing that you've been on it, and you've been really passionate about it. But there is, Kamin, there's a very strong sense of intentionality about all of this, don't you think?
Yeah.
That it doesn't just happen unless you actually think about it and ponder it, and that's not a favorite thing in our culture. We're a what I call a GSD culture, and that's get stuff done, and the literal translation is get shit done, but it's, we're in that GSD, get stuff done, get it done. And without really evaluating, is this the best me? Is this the truest me? Is this what's going to give me a sense of value in my life?
And I think you've talked about this before in other podcasts, but it's the being side of being a human, right?
Yeah.
The human being versus the human doing. And it's an opportunity, if we don't take time for ourselves and we don't carve out, and it doesn't have to be a long time, and it can be over time. So setting aside, even setting the timer for 20 minutes and just being able to sit there and take notes, journaling, capturing ideas. And really, if my life were ideal, there's a great book called The Passion Test. If my life were ideal, I would be what? What would I be doing? And being able to really help people to connect and really hear what wants to come through them. And they might say, well, many people will say, well, I love just laying on the couch watching Netflix and binge watching. Now, if you're binge watching to numb out, that's one thing. My nephews will watch hundreds of hours of video, but two of my nephews are in film, so they're studying their craft.
Right.
So are you numbing out with whatever it is, or are you taking time to hone a craft, move forward in a particular direction?
Yeah, Kamin, that's our addictive society, isn't it? I mean, drugs and alcohol aren't our only addictions. There are some, because addiction is in my opinion, is essentially a numbing out. It is numbing what I don't like in my life, and just getting involved or in depth with something else, and it could be TV, it could be food, it could you could just go on with the number of issues. And I think we're a terribly addicted society, and we're terribly sort of fond of numbing out, and it's just because life is so easy then.
Well, it hides our fear, right? Our fear, our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure, as Marianne Williamson said, right? But if I take that time and do this search, what if I find nothing? If there are people who would rather stay on unemployment than look for a job. And that might be, that's not everybody, because there are a lot of people who are searching to get back to work, but there are people who might not, they're getting paid well and they don't want to, but that too can be out of fear. What if I get rejected when I go back? I'm making more now, but I might have to settle. I might have to I may only be good for that one thing. And the fear of challenging that notion and really doing the excavation and taking time to ask, what would I love to create in my life? What would my life look like if it were ideal? What would it look like if I really were creative? That may be a scary proposition. So they can start small with just a few minutes a day asking that. Take themselves for a walk. Look at what that might look like so that they can start to move just in the energy of it to open up their vision just enough to start to contemplate what else might be for them.
That's interesting you would say that, because later on in the show I have an item I want to discuss, and that's about, reinventing your life doesn't mean you have to change careers, spouses, or significant others. It's a matter of perhaps reprioritizing your life and understanding, even in the current situation you're in, if you stay in a line with certain priorities and certain values, your life is going to be very much different. And you don't have to change the hardwiring of it all. It's the soft skills of it that contribute to much more, what I want to move to now, much more meaning in life. And I know meaning in life is very important to me. And you told me that every human is hardwired for meaning and contribution. And I so agree, and I would just like your take on that. This is not just willy-nilly. We are hardwired for meaning and to contribute. As Aristotle said, the purpose of humans is to contribute to the value of society, and I've always stuck by that. Can you give me your ideas on that?
Absolutely, and I really appreciate how you posed it, because when you're talking about, it may not be, we're not saying in reinventing yourself to get a new spouse, you can actually fall in love even more with your spouse, with your significant other, with your children, with your life. In a way, it's a recommitment and rediscovery, and going out to what it is that, like getting back in touch with what got you to where you were in the beginning, right? And so you had asked me earlier what were some of the learnings. I will say one of the learnings for me was my husband and I doubled down on our kindness, love, and respect for each other during this period of time, because he's used to being on the road. And so our kindness for each other actually grew. And actually, how we take care of each other, it's just phenomenal to me that could be one of the outcomes of a year together. And so as you look at meaning, contribution, and I'm going to add a third C, and the next one is community. We're hardwired for community also. I'm doing a lot of neuroscience study right now. And this ability for us it's safer for us to be together, right? So we've been in this year apart. As we coming out of this, it's the community, and how do we take care of each other? How do we contribute to other people? And that gives us fundamental meaning. When I was first thinking of becoming a coach full time, I was helping someone one night, and really helping her. She had called crying. It was one of my former employees on my team, and she was crying. She was so upset, and we worked through it, and I guided her. And I remember hanging up that call and thinking, I actually threw my hands in the air, and I was like, I just added to the sum total of loving in the universe by helping this person heal what was so troubling to her. So that's what's on offer as we look out for each other and care for each other and build a stronger, more loving community is what is on offer as we come out of into this post-COVID world.
Oh boy, we are so speaking the same language. I just had 3 or 4 hours ago, I had a 30-minute conversation with Terry Hershey, and we were talking about the value of community, which I want to sort of end our show with today, but that we are not, this is not soul survivor. This is community survival. And we're in a time, I think, a time of consciousness of much more community orientation. Now, it's frustrating some people, but those of us that believe in community, we're seeing this could be, it's going to be a difficult road, but it's a road that must be trudged. Trudged, is that such a word? Dredged.
We'll go with it.
Trudged.
I think it is.
but it's a road that must be walked, and we have to do that. You mentioned something about you and Mark, and my wife said the same thing to me, that COVID has been good for us, and that for us as a couple, because it has forced us to be compassionate and caring. And two words that really came for us, every couple is going to be different, but it is acceptance and non-judgmentalism. It's acceptance of Pam as she is, and not trying to make her as I want her to be, but to understand who she is, appreciate, love who she is, actually support that, and don't be judging of it. She doing the same thing has just created such a softness and openness and compatibility. It's just, and it was just that simple. Those two simple acts. Now they're not that simple to be accepting and non-judgmental, because all of us think we know better than anybody else, but we certainly don't know better for our spouse or our partner or our close friend or a client. We have to be sensitive to who they are.
Yes, and to remember that the word loving is a verb, right? So it's our opportunity, even if this hasn't been somebody's experience, that it's been more challenging for them in their relationship. They can choose in any given moment to switch to, as I say, kindness, loving, respect, or acceptance, and really, bringing that love in, right? Bringing the compassion in, bringing in kindness, so that there's an opportunity for each person to live their best life and the unit that they are in to continue to grow.
You know, I know my listeners have heard this, but I'll do it very briefly. My wife and I, once a year, we between Christmas and New Year's, we talk about what kind of husband was I last year, what kind of wife was I last year, and I will write down, I will have my wife identify, what could I do to make life great for you? Give me ideas. And I actually make a list and sort of rate myself by the list. Am I doing this? And how many times do we ask our spouse that question? What could I do to make your life wonderful?
It's a beautiful question.
Oh, it really is.
Really beautiful.
Yeah, and it's very helpful. We're going to, we think we've been into the meat of this, but we're going to now get into. We've been talking a lot of theory. We're going to get into some practical parts. But before we do that, Kamin, we need to take a brief break. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay, so let's take a brief break, Paul, and we'll come right back. Welcome to the next chapter with Charlie. This is Charlie Hedges, and I am talking to my extra special guest, Kamin Samuel, and we are talking about reinventing your life post-COVID. In the first half of our discussion, we talked about sort of ideas, concepts, ideas and concepts. Now we're going to get a bit more practical, and I want to start by talking more about something I mentioned earlier, and that is perhaps for some of us, this might be an opportunity to start over yet one more time and ask ourselves the question, what would I like to do given what I have gone through in the complexities of the last year? And maybe, and surprisingly, I'm not thinking so much about a career change or a relational change as I'm talking about a shift in priorities, a shift and I have some suggestions. In 1997, now I wrote a book called Getting the Right Things Right, Personal Strategies for Reinventing the Life You Want. And I was talking to our receptionist downstairs. When I told her I wrote the book in 1997, she said that it was a year before I was born. So talk about me feeling old. That was interesting. So, but in that book, I flesh out what I call the 4 P's, and that is passion, purpose, people, and power. And I have found those, Kamin, to be extraordinarily helpful in my life planning and my life development. It doesn't require a career change or a relational change. It requires activities in 4 what I think are sort of covering life in general ideas of passion. What do you do that aligns with your passion and incites your passion? Because what excites you? What gets you flowing, gets you moving? And are you doing those types of things? The next one is purpose, and that is our meaning. You know, that also has a lot to do with our work, but not solely with our work. What sort of activities do we do that fills a purpose in us, a meaningful purpose? The third one is people. We are relational beings. Even those of us introverts are not built to be alone. We are built to be with people. And what people do you have in your life, and how do you relate with them? And finally, power. I am talking about the source of power in your life other than yourself, and that's in AA. We call it a higher power. It is in a lot of different faith traditions. They call it source. You know, I call it God. It is something that is more powerful than myself. And what is my relationship to that? Do you have any feelings just in general on those 4 P's of passion, purpose, people, and power?
I love those 4 P's, and I think that they're so helpful because, as you said, it's not necessarily even about changing anything outside in our life as much as changing our relationship to it. You could add the 5th P, which is what you brought in, which is priorities, right? It's this ability for us to look at the passion, purpose, people, and power, and this like from an inside-out approach that allows us to connect with ourselves first, to hear ourselves, and then connect with others.
You know, I want to give an example. My lists are not exhaustive, but I have, and it's on my website, and anybody who wants to go on the website, go to videos and go to the last video, and I talk about, Terry Hershey and I talk in depth in video about the 4 Ps, and they're really quite good videos. I mean, I just reviewed them for the first time in like 5 years, and I said, man, this is better than I thought. And let me give you and the audience an idea what priorities were under my list of passion, purpose, people, and praise, to give you an idea of what I did. But you can certainly do anything you want to do. But for passion, for example, it was read 3 books a month. Secondly, find and enjoy beauty, galleries, museums, gardens, moving. International travel, 3 trips. And then pay attention, just as a means for presence and serenity. I think I'm a big believer in paying attention, that we, and I am horrible at this, that I can just go through life without paying attention. I can drive the same way and never pay attention to my surroundings, or I can be with people and not really pay attention. But those create passion for me. My purpose was, one, with my son. I'm his personal business manager and advisor. The blog, the podcast, my work with Wells of Life in Uganda, and my work with Wells of Life in the United States. Those 5 activities really fulfill my need for purpose, that I am being useful, I am contributing, I'm doing something meaningful, I feel good when I do them. And then with people, it's contribute to my wife's peace and safety, to be a friend, advisor, and father to my son. I have replenishing relationships with 3 people, and I have sort of neutral relationships that I work on. And finally, in power, I have a morning routine. I surrender to the will of God. I try to pay attention to my character and my spiritual health, and I have 1 retreat per year. That's as simple as it is. You know, it doesn't get much more simple than that, do you think? And then I evaluate myself monthly. Just once a month I go through. I don't do it daily, I don't do it weekly, and I do it most months. I sometimes miss a month. And I evaluate myself on a plus, check, minus scale. Am I doing exceedingly well, satisfactory, or do I need improvement? And anything that gets a check, minus, and below means I need improvement, and I have one of 2 decisions. Either 1, improve on that, or 2, take a look at it and say, it was a bad goal. I really have no desire to fulfill that. And I give myself permission not to do it. But those really move me. When I do those, and I can, by the end of the year, I can get check plus or above on those, I guarantee you I've had a good year.
I love how you segment them and what's in each category, because I think it really gives a picture for people of how they can do this for themselves, right? And how they can put their lives, especially coming out of this, out of the pandemic and into the post-COVID world, from a higher consciousness, right? Taking time to give themselves a retreat now, this summer, anytime. Many times I don't start my Mondays, until much later in the day, sometime after 11 o'clock. But that's almost a spiritual retreat for myself, to pause before I start my week, to ground in myself and to listen and to connect within. And so it doesn't take much to give yourself a retreat. It just gives you identifying some time that you could set aside to even go through these questions for themselves of what are they passionate about. I think for me, I like to say that I married Mark later in life, and so he fits into pretty much all of my categories as my priority and my passion, and taking time for him and purpose and people for sure. And so for me, lifelong learning fits in, and because you have, reading a certain number of books, for me, it's just, I'm constantly learning. And sometimes I have to balance that, and then my family. And so this opportunity, and my business, right? So I spend a lot of time on my business and helping people and growing. And And Mark and I actually we do our retreat a little bit differently. We take time. His book is called B State, and it's a breakthrough for businesses.
Great book, yeah.
And we do it for ourselves.
Oh, do you?
And set up. We call it a breakthrough retreat, and we're going to do one this summer. And we just take time to really look at the categories of our life and what would we do differently, and what do we want to create from here, and how do we create together. What has shifted in the last year? Because I think, as I mentioned, what we're coming out of COVID knowing is that we want more time together, more opportunity to be together, because we really don't like to be apart very often, even if we're working in separate rooms. So I love the passion and people asking themselves what drives them, what lights them up, what does, as we talked about earlier, what gives them goosebumps, and really putting it into some of the questions we also asked earlier about, what did you learn, and what do you feel you still have to go as you come out of this time.
The difficulty, I so agree with what you're saying, and the difficulty is, in my opinion, we have I don't know if dastardly is the right word, let's just say less than competent education system, about memorizing and passing tests, and that just doesn't teach the way we need to teach. And we teach nothing of being pensive and contemplative. And since we're a nation of extroverts, and we're a nation that believes in productivity and fundamental productivity, there is no time to be pensive, to be thoughtful, to be contemplative. And, historically, the great thinkers of the world, and I read the late medieval Christian mystics, and that's all they were about. They were not about producing and doing. They were about thinking through issues and thinking about what's important, and then how that impacts other people, how that impacts community. It's also how it impacts their relationship with the divine. But it is taking that time, and it's a cultural anomaly. We just do not know anything about it, and no place. I don't know any place that teaches it. Churches don't teach it, which that should be one of their key teachings. And if you get into yoga and Buddhism and meditation, they teach it, and it's hugely successful. But we in America are just all about getting out and doing, and kind of not just thinking about it. It's just the act of, it's your point of doing versus being, or being versus doing, that we think we do and we're successful, and it's not in harmony with who we are. We somehow, I don't know how we can push the idea of reflection and contemplation, but it will definitely, you will not be the same person if you do that. You will not be the same person if you reflect on your life and the people in your life.
And I do think there are some programs. I happen to sit on a board for one of LA Unified School District's largest after-school program providers, and one of their programs is based on what they call heart-set skills, and so which are really about seeing the best in everyone and listening from the heart, and really teaching these youngsters how to listen. And there's some other wonderful programs that are out there, but it's not widespread. And it is something that we do need to do, and we need to do for adults. I absolutely agree that there a greater amount of influence and focus needs to be done for adults, to give them the time to sit and think and make friends with their thoughts, right? Many times, I tell clients, we don't want you to spend too much time in your own thoughts, right? Because when we're in our thoughts, we're actually in our default side of our brain, and that's not always a good thing. And we can't actually do. We need to move over to the executive function of our brain to actually do. But we want our thoughts to be directional. Either from meditation, be empty of thought. No thought is the goal. To be able to bring ourselves back to our breath. Many times I'll send my clients a 1 minute meditation, and it's really just focusing on your breathing. Because what we're doing is creating space in our neural pathways for new information to come in, to rewire ourselves in the direction. So it's not just being in our thoughts where they're undirected or unfocused, because left to our own devices, depending on somebody's perspective and ego and whatever, they can get caught in a negative thought storm, and we don't want that. But what we do want is these opportunities to create no thought, to create space where they can hear what's the next step for them to take in their life. A lot of times, especially when somebody is struggling, I'll ask them to just get quiet and ask themselves inside, or their higher power, whatever they believe in, who could I be of service to, or what's the next thing for me to do, and listen for an action and follow through on that. So it doesn't have to be a 2-hour meditation or, in the lotus position, which I absolutely cannot get in.
I'm not limber enough. There's no way. It would be 30 minutes of uncomfort.
To do some box breathing, 5 in, hold for 5, 5 out, hold for 5. And that even comes from some of the Navy SEALs. And so this opportunity for us to really bring ourselves into alignment. When you talk about soul alignment, the only way we understand our own soul alignment is to create the space to hear what is our passion, to hear what our purpose, to hear who we connect to through the people, and that's tapping into our source, to tapping into that power.
Like that, and I want to just take a part of what you said and kind of wrap up our discussion in it, and I think it's really essential as we're talking about reinventing our life, and it sounds like I'm talking just about the individual, about me, but as we both know, reinventing your life includes the people in your life and people not in your life. And so on a final note, one thing I've observed from isolation is the preeminence of communal versus individual thinking. There's a newfound reality that life is more than just about me. And, we are all stuck on this ego thing that life, no matter how much we want to make it about other people, it is still about me, and that truly the needs and life of other people, and that may include people I don't even know, they can be impacted by my personal attitudes and my behaviors, and especially the disenfranchised that we are now facing in our divisive country, that we are finally, it looks like we may attempt to do something for the disenfranchised. We'll see, how much government can do and how much we as individuals can do. But I have a question for you personally, and I think it's important for our listeners. I'm sure I've mentioned it before, but our listeners know that you are the first African-American female helicopter pilot for the Navy. Now that's a big deal, Kamin. Thank
you.
I mean that's a huge deal. And so you've had first-hand experience with race and gender discrimination, and I know community, as you have already talked about. So I'm just, my opinion is community is a very important word in your vocabulary. Can you wrap us up and tell us and talk to me about the transition from personal ego-centered goals to a more communal mindset, that we have a society that we're responsible to?
What a great phrasing of that, Charlie, because I think it's really important. As a former military member, I served in order to protect and defend this country and the Constitution of this great nation. And so the opportunity for all of us as we come out of this last 16 months or so is for us, I think we talked a little bit about it earlier, is this sense of community, that we are here to care for each other. All of this bad behavior, the racism, the violence against certain people or anyone is not okay. Not okay by any stretch of the imagination, because it shows our own individual insecurity, that we are not we-centered, that we are not our brother's keeper. We are not here and supporting each other. And I think as we come out, it's even more important than ever for us to, if you're wearing your mask, and I still wear mine even though I have my shots, I still smile with my eyes and let people. It's a way for me as an African American woman out in a predominantly white world to let people know, look, I'm safe with you. And for each of us, no matter what color, race, creed, religion, this is an opportunity for us to really expand in the action of loving, in the action of caring, to use our passion, purpose, people, and power from this place that I am here to help and serve our fellow person, not just about me. It's not just about me. It's not just about me and mine. That we are as humans in evolution are based in community, that we can care for each other, that we can expand into greater loving, that us loving and caring for another does not take anything away. Us expanding into who could I be of service to today doesn't take anything away from anyone. And so we could be in a certain level of compassion fatigue over things, but this is an opportunity for us to double down into our compassionate nature and our loving nature, to keep thanking the people who are on the front lines, and those include our grocery store people and everybody who is around us who is service oriented, and for us to be service oriented as well. So really taking those 4 Ps and allowing ourselves to live from that and really see this world as creative. Nothing is being taken from anyone. There is enough space and room and love for everyone, and we can go into that.
Mm-hmm. What Covey called, 40 years ago or so, the abundance mindset rather than the scarcity mindset. That there is plenty to go around, and we are raised. This is not. I heard Kevin Costner, and he just did a film called Black and White, or Black or White, or something like that, and it's on race, and he's really proud of the film. And he brought up the point that what point did he bring up? I had the point in mind, and then I lost the point. But he brought up, he said, I was raised in a, not overtly, but a racist society, racist family, and as most white Americans were, like it or not, there was that. He says, I am much better than my family. I am much better at accepting the whole, and he says, my children are way much better than me, because they're raised with, there's so many biracial children, and so much diversity going on, that our children, and I even see it with my son. My son plays professional baseball. Well, he's on a team that's 70% Latin, and he's just best friends with everybody. Race is not an issue, because they're all playing together trying to win games, and so the hope is going to be found in our kids. The difficulty is going to be in people my age, that are getting older, that are, we're just not raised this way, and so it's a whole different way of thinking, and yet we must do it. I just totally concur that we have to.
Can I add one thing?
Of course you may.
So I recently did a talk on implicit bias, and not from a place of any racism. It's simply that it's unfamiliar, as Kevin Costner said, and you have alluded to. Many people, it's unfamiliar for them to be around people that are different from them. We, as also humans, seek out sameness. Sameness says we are safe. And so what we have as an opportunity now to really look at is, how can we make others more familiar? How do we get to know people? Someone asked me recently, I made a comment about being black, and they said, well, is it black or African American, and how do I know? And I said, well, you just ask, right? You just ask, because it doesn't offend me. Because many people, this was about hiring practices, this talk, and, they'll tend to go to Jane, John, Tim, those names versus somebody's name like Kamin or whatever. And so just be willing to ask, slow down, and see the other human in front of them, and open up that our job as adults is to make the unfamiliar familiar, and to give people, to see the benefit, give people the benefit of the doubt, see the best in people, and not do generalities. And this is the time that we can literally bring more openness, more awareness, more community, more collaboration, more abundance thinking. And I have a gift for your listeners, if it would be of service to them. If they go to wealthflightschool.com, I have a whole repository of resources on abundance and wealth, and 2 of my PDFs of my books are in there that they can have. Like, I want everybody to realize that everybody can win, that there is abundance everywhere around them if they can just tune into it and connect within and connect with another.
I would love it. Would you please send me the link to that so I can put it in the show notes?
Absolutely.
And we can get it in the show notes. So I just couldn't agree more. So we're talking about reinventing your life. So there is a personal aspect to reinventing your life, and that's the true soulful self, and what does that mean? But it includes community, that this is not just about me, that I am part of a community. And, in my Christian background, we are all part of God's community, and all part of in harmony with that. And it's like I'll close with this. Saint Teresa of Avila, and she's known as like the mystic of mystics, and would have radical visionary prayers, and she would say, you can be in a mystical visionary prayer, where it's like almost out of worldly, out of body experience, but you can have a sister who is in need or pain. She says, your job is to leave your prayer and go serve your sister. And coming from Teresa, that's a big statement. And I think that has to do with, we have a personal job do to increase the value we offer to the world, but also to know when it's a time to leave ourselves and go into the community and serve the community.
I really love that, because it really is about kind of living love, living action, living service. And really in that community is no one, like as a military member, it wasn't just a phrase, no man or person left behind. We didn't leave anybody behind. We want to take this is the greatest nation and can be. We have a ways to go, but it is the greatest nation, and we do not have to leave anybody behind. We can take everybody with us, and it's this opportunity to extend a hand we can reinvent ourselves over and over and over again to continually look for our best self, and that's really on offer as we come out of this COVID world.
Kamin, Samuel, there needs to be more of you. There needs to be more people like you, and your message has to get out, because you are so thoughtful and so bang on your ideas. And what a fun and insightful time together. Thank you so much. I want to know, do you want me to post anything for your coaching, or are you just filled up in your coaching?
Well, I am full, but they can start with the Wealth Flight School. They can always reach me at kaminsamuel.com, and I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody and to help them in any way, because that really is my heart, is to be of service to humanity.
I want to tell everybody that is true, that Kamin is just not BSing us, that she will take your calls and will not charge you for it, and she will spend time with you, and it's just you're just such an outstanding coach and life compatriot. I so appreciate you.
And I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Okay, and I want to thank our listeners for tuning into The Next Chapter with Charlie, and check out our website, thenextchapter.life. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.